Hey all, Heretic here, and today in the Battlegrounds, we're going to be talking about some of the most crazy, fun cards we've seen in Battlegrounds history. From current, all the way back in the day to the early times of BGs when stats were much, much smaller than they are now. So during this video, you might see some cards that we're going to say were broken and strong, and you're going to be like, that looks weak. Well, there's such a thing called power creep. Power creep is the longer the game goes on, the more powerful things inevitably get to make the game more fun and interesting. That means that things that came out way in the back in the day that were super strong may not have aged as well. Well, they were super strong back then, now they're kind of sad. And that's going to be the case with some of the cards you see here, but nonetheless, they still were powerful, impactful, and have traumatized all of us who played back then, either with a lot of fun, and it's a good memory, or yeah, you're like, oh, it murdered me 1,000 ways from Sundays. Let's dig into some of these cards. And also, I've been gone for about a week because I've been working on some new art stuff I want to do for the cards. So during this video, you're going to see some slight animation / effects done to the cards. And please, I would like in the comments at the end for you to tell me which ones you liked, didn't like, just whatever stood out for you. If you hated them all, if you thought they were too distracting, or if you thought it was perfect and you want more of this, just some feedback so I know if something like this is something you'd like to see more of, or if it was overall just a waste of my time, but I had fun doing it either way, so all good. Let's jump right in. Let's not start crazy. Let's start with an old dependable. Tarecgosa and Prize Promo Drake were this combo for the longest time of how you played dragons. You would never really scale to 6 to get Tarecgosa because he just didn't matter. These tier 3 and 4 minions just scaled each other up beautifully. Now, I know they changed their tiers a couple times, they wiggled stuff around, but ultimately, this was how you played dragons. You'd sit Prize Promo Drake next to Tarecgosa. They would get in combat buffs, Tarecgosa, and it would just keep those buffs, and you'd scale and scale and scale. And I don't know how it would work nowadays because the stats have run wild so much, but I still feel like this was an interesting way to play with the other ways you can get in combat buffs. Tarecgosa really could do some fun, interesting things. So I'm kind of sad to see them go, and hopefully one day they'll make a return, just not have some of the broken moments that we had to deal with. All right, let's talk something more modern. The Rylak Metalhead is still in the game, and the Rylak Metalhead has been controversial at times. The triggering of battle cries during combat, ideally, it would just add some buffs to the board, but it doesn't. It adds cards to hand. It permanently buffs the shop. Rylak has a lot of uses, whether it's Felemental, Primal Fins, or just a Menagerie Jug buffing the board. It always does work. And this thing can be an absolute monster if someone gets it early with the right kind of battle cry card, easily throwing them into first place. Like, oh yeah, they might lose a couple combats while they're getting ramped up, but once they're off and running, this thing is insane. Let's not even talk about some of the buddies you can trigger out of this thing. You start those going and you're looking, oh look, I get a tier 6 dragon every time it dies, and oh look, I've got all the Tarecgosas and butterflies I need, I win. This is a lot of fun, but a lot of headaches sometimes, in a super good card. Captain Hoggarr. Hey, do you like APM? Do you like having damn near infinite gold? Captain Hoggarr, this thing is insane. This thing gave you every option you wanted. It was, hey, here's gold every time you buy a pirate. And guess what? You bought every pirate you could when you had Hoggarr. Did you have 2 Hoggars? Was one gold? Were you making money every time you bought pirates? Captain Hoggarr was so much fun. I loved Captain Hoggarr. Captain Hoggarr, the minion is the same as the hero, but you could only ever have one of the hero. You could have multiples and you could golden the minion. It was so much fun. So disappointed that this minion got removed. And one day I hope Hoggarr comes back. But the glory of the APM that this thing brought was definitely one of the strongest cards in the game. Dr. Boombox. Now, if you want to talk about an infuriating card, this tier 5, 7/1 mech, Death Rattle deals 7 damage to the 2 nearest enemy minions. Means when you knew who you were fighting, you could snipe very effectively against certain boards, because you could put it wherever their most important minions were, especially if they had a combo that required a certain trigger order. You could taunt this thing, put it wherever you want, and just torture your opponent. This thing was a nightmare to play against. There was nothing you could do other than try to play a mind game of moving your minions around, which ultimately hurt you as much as it possibly helped you, especially if you got it wrong. You just never knew. Hated this card so much. What can be said about Nomi, the Kitchen Nightmare? Nomi, for those who don't remember, was a minion that every time you cycled an elemental would permanently buff the shop 1/1. Simple enough, but for some reason, this was one of chat's favorite card. Not just in my stream, in a lot of streamer streams. This thing was silly. Everyone wanted us to play this, and I don't know why. You'd triple into a Nomi, it would be a Murloc lobby in a meta where Murlocs are strong, and people would be like, Nomi, switch to Nomi. It doesn't matter if it's turn 8 or turn 16, your chat's screaming to switch to Nomi. It was such a memed card, but when it did work, which wasn't all the time and not all the time very often, it was a lot of fun. So I understand why chat wanted it, but overall, I never was a huge Nomi fan. Imp Mama. Now, for those who don't know, Imp Mama was a tier 6, 6/10 demon that whenever this minion took damage, it summoned a random demon and it gave it taunt. Now, that was a very different time for playing demons. Demons were all about summoning things, whether it was little tokens or big tokens. You would just summon a lot of stuff with demons. Demons now are more about just giant stompy boards, but this was more a token thing that you could eventually scale up when you found Firebat, but otherwise, mostly the time, you were just kind of playing to do fun token stuff through most of the game. So Imp Mama certainly was the epitome of that. You'd buff this thing up, it could take lots of hits, and it would just keep summoning more things that often summoned more things that were just annoying. And you'd use this in combination with other minions, and you would just tear people down. I loved Imp Mama. I thought this was so much of a fun card. I loved the random nature of it. Some of you have watched a lot of my stuff, and you know I like random. This is random. This is as random as you could get with what you'd get summoned out of it. I just thought it was a lot of fun to play Imp Mama, and I do miss that style of play for demons. Let's talk Street Magician. Now, I'm not talking about the version we know now. I mean the good version. The tier 3, 5/3 neutral. Death Rattle put a secret into the battlefield. Yeah, you heard me, folks. Death Rattle. There was lots of ways to trigger this. There was lots of ways to get additional of it running on the board. And basically, you'd get 2 of these things, and you just have a Christmas tree effect of secrets that would never go away. They would just keep going off. And it would make combats that you were obviously supposed to lose suddenly swing your way and dramatically be in your favor and just feel silly. Like they took so long to go through. You're like, yeah, half your shop face is gone because you were watching secrets pop the entire damn time. Those animations took forever. You'd run anywhere from 5 to, I don't know, like 8, 9, 10 secrets, depending on the order that they happened or how many triggers you got out of these things. They were crazy. Street Magician in its previous form was incredibly annoying and overpowered at the same time, especially when you had multiples of them. Soul Juggler I really enjoyed as a minion. Now I know it fell off pretty harsh, usually towards the late game, depending what tribes we're in, but there was just something fun about that demon build where you'd get a million different things, it summoned a million different things, and you just have this juggler in the back, throwing this little bit of damage randomly all over the board. It was so much fun to just watch it hit targets and be like, no, not that one, this one, this one. And I loved the absurdity of Soul Juggler for that aspect of it. Yes, I understand it was very frustrating when they tripled a couple demons into a tier 3, and that tier 3 was the Soul Juggler, and they're like, well, I guess I'm gonna start tiering because you just kind of had so much tempo from them. It was stupid, but overall this minion was a lot of fun, and I was a little sad to see it go, but since demons changed how they work, you definitely don't want this on the current version of demons boards. The Arcane Cannon. Did you not experience the wonder that was the Arcane Cannon? Let me enlighten you. This tier 2, 2/2 neutral can't attack. That sounds pretty good, right? You like how it can't attack? How bad can it? Wait. After an adjacent minion attacks, deal 2 damage to an enemy minion. So it's a tier 2 that won't kill itself, and that every time your other minions attack, especially if you have Wind Fury or something along those lines, it will shoot and deal extra damage. And you could position yourself where your minions, of course, would die around it and just keep attacking with the new minion, which would now be the new adjacent minion, which would do 2 damage again. And it would really, really be annoying. I'm just really happy this isn't in the game now with Undead's incredibly low health and summoning ability. Can you imagine how many shots an Arcane Cannon would get? Yeah, it's 2 damage. You're like, how bad can that be? And in the late game, it means nothing. It's a tier 2. you get those really fast. And at tier 2 through really the first 6, 7, 9 turns, that can be effective for a long time, doing a lot of damage. Arcane Cannon was so frustrating to deal with. I hated this thing and I never want to see it again. And hey, you want one of the epitomes of overpowered? Let's look at the Stormscale Siren. In the form I'm giving you here, it's tier 5, 6/5 Naga. At the end of your turn, you cast your spellcraft minion spells on them. So you have a bunch of spellcraft minions, you get all those spells, you cast those spells, they would then trigger again. And yeah, that was ridiculous. True, they targeted themselves. That means when you cast the spellcraft, you didn't need to worry about ever using it on themselves unless you wanted just, I don't know, the extra effect, depending what it was. Obviously more stats and death rattles. Why not extra? Extra Divine Shield? Not so much. But the true horror of this card is that when Naga first came out, the stats on this aren't the same as they were, but it was the same ability and it was tier 3. Yes, this card started at tier 3 and it didn't survive very long. Within the month, I believe it was gone. They kept trying to raise it up tiers and it turned out it was just broken no matter what tier they put on it. And hopefully we never see it again because this card was problematic. And can we really talk about powerful cards, overpowered cards, whether they're here or gone, without mentioning Titus Rivendare and Brann Bronzebeard? These two cards have enabled so many combos and are just powerhouses unto themselves. You don't even need some of these crazy cards to make these effective. Just normal cards with these are very, very good. So we have to give a nod to both Titus and Brann for the hard work they've done over the years. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I like pirates. I like getting to cycle cards a lot. Fleet Admiral Tethys, the tier 6, 5/6 pirate, currently in the game right now, after you spend 9 gold, get a random pirate, is just fun. I spend gold, cycle cards, and guess what? I get freebie pirates to do things with. I'm always going to play Fleet Admiral Tethys. In fact, oftentimes I'll be playing one build, it'll be offered to me, and if I'm not playing on my main account, I'm looking at it really hard going, I can pivot. I love Tethys. Just this style of gameplay is so engaging to me and so interesting. The only frustration is when you lose to a board where you've cycled like 80, 90 cards, and they played like 3 in their turn, and they still beat you. That's when it's a little annoying. The Tideraiser. This tier 6, 6/4 neutral was only in pirate lobbies, but Death Rattle summon 3 random pirates has always driven me nuts. The fact that you can kill it, well, that was the last minion on your board, so it's going to summon 3 minions, and it could summon 3 tier 6 pirates, and your damage shoots through the roof. It's just enraging to me. I always hated when stuff like that happened, when you took extra damage from things like the Tideraiser. Just never felt good. When it was doing its thing and it was popping out random pirates just to be involved in the combat, I was fine with that. It was the problem that those minions counted as whatever tier they were, as opposed to just tokens. Like, they really are just tokens being kicked out of the boat, so they should only do 1 damage each. But no, whatever their tier was the damage you took. I hated this thing. Next up, we have tier 5 for Undead Beast Sinrunner Blanchy. This thing was terrifying. Reborn, this is reborn with the full health and enchantments. You put Divine Shield on it, you got death rattles in it. Did you buff it up to be 100? It'd come back just like that. Without Reborn, it was crazy. This thing was very unbalancing to the game as it existed. It was just hard to deal with. Everyone was buffing this thing up and running wild with this nightmare. It just comes charging across the board and you're looking at it going, what do I do? Because I'm going to kill it. It's just going to come back again with all the crap it had on it. It was very frustrating to deal with. But conversely, a lot of fun to buff up and run over your opponent with. So I guess it all depends which side of the beating you're on. Pogo-Hopper. Tier 2, 1/1 mech. Battlecry, gain +2/+2 for each other Pogo-Hopper you've played this game. Now, when this was a thing, I never really had fun with it. A lot of people requested it, said I should do it, list it in this video, so I figured, sure, because it is fondly remembered by the community, but I never really got a big deal out of this. With certain heroes, of course, it was much more useful in the current meta with the way we could trigger battle cries or recycle this to the shop. This thing would be very, very broken. But back when it came out, it never was that big. This is one of those cards where if you look at it scaling wise, it doesn't look that good. Well, back then, it wasn't even that good. It was hard to pull off, but when you could make it work, it was a lot of fun. And I do have some memories of seeing ridiculous ones that horrified me. Let's close it out with a good one. Tier 2, 3/3 Beast, Leapfrogger. Death Rattle, give a friendly beast +1/+1, and this Death Rattle. It really doesn't sound that bad when you look at it. You're like, oh, well, it doesn't seem too bad. It just summons another, gives a beast a 1/1 and gives it this Death Rattle. It doesn't sound insane. You start triggering this Death Rattle multiple times. You give this Reborn. All of a sudden, you got just this trigger going off 100 times at a combat, and frogs hopping all over the board, and utter insanity ensues. Your opponent sits there in horror as he watches a combat that never ends, that is just filled with the sound of giant hopping frogs that somehow are bigger than the minion they're on. Because if you think about it, it's giving a beast a 1/1, so it's a 1/1 frog essentially jumping on it. But it could go from being a 20/20 to 1,000/1,000. It's a lot of frogs on that poor little 20/20. This thing was a ton of fun, and I was very sad to see it go, but at the same time, it did drive me a little crazy when I was on the wrong end of it. But still, a good sign of a card that's a little overpowered, but still fun too, because the RNG. That's it. That's my list of cards. Now, I did do a video a little while back for the most broken cards, and some of these should probably fall under this category, but I just kind of wanted to go with some of the more powerful ones. So if you're interested in seeing those, because there isn't really any crossover, go take a look. The link is going to be at the end of this video if you want to see that video. It's very similar where we're looking at some of the more broken cards that have been in the Battlegrounds that were come and gone really fast. But these are the more powerful ones that, you know, have been fun and we've seen going. Basically a continuation of the same idea, but I expanded on it and wanted to have more fun with it. What did you think? Did you think that my list was crazy? Do you think I missed a bunch? Maybe they're in the other video. Maybe I missed them completely and you're like, oh my God, Heretic, how did you miss this? Let me know, leave them in the comments below. And please let me know what you thought about the different animation or just lighting effect styles I put on the cards. Do you think they're great or unnecessary or just, whatever? I want to hear it. I want to know what you think. And thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I know I'm asking a lot of you, but it really does help the channel grow and really enjoy doing this. So the more we grow, the more fun this is. And just keep going along and having a good time with it. Thanks again, all. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching. Later.